Good day, esteemed learners. Welcome to today's lesson. It's going to be on Jamb 2025 questions. So we're going to solve some few questions in just the 2025 Jamb. Let's take the first question. Basically, it's going to be on binary operation. Here it says here, given that A asterisk B is equal to A plus B divided by AB plus A minus B. Now, if we have a question like this, and you're told to find the value of 3 asterisk 2. Now, we have A asterisk B. This is the interpretation. Binary operation will give you, they said, it will give you the operation, then this is the interpretation. So if you have A plus B divided by AB, all plus A minus B as the interpretation to this. So it means that anywhere I see A is being represented by what? By 3, and then B is being represented by what? By 2. So basically, we're going to have that A asterisk B will now be equal to A here, which is 3. We have 3 plus 2, because B is 2, all divided by 3 bracket 2, then all plus bracket 3 minus 2. Alright, so here we have A plus 2 will give you 5. So we have 3 plus 2, which is 5, all divided by 2 times 3 gives you what? 6, all plus what? 3 minus 1 is, 3 minus 2 is 1. So finally, what are we getting? 5 over 6 now plus 1, that gives you what? One whole number, 5 over 6. Or if you want to put it in improper fraction, what are we going to do? This is 6 times 1 will give you 6 plus 5 give you what? The answer that becomes what? 11 over 6. So, and I think it should be in the option as well. Now let's look at the second one. The second one says simplify 25. Second question says simplify 25 raised 125 raised to the power of minus 1 over 3. 125 to the power of minus 1 over 3. Then times 49 to the power of minus half, and then multiplied by 10 to the power of 0. This is question number 6. This one is actually question number 5. Question number 5. Number 5. Here, this is question number 6. Now, let's look at how we're going to solve this one. Now, this is indices. Now, if this to the power of negative in indices, negative index law says that when you have a negative at the index, it means 1 over whatever is at the base. The same thing here is also 1 over. And then when you have 1 over, this is a fractional index. So fractional index law says that this one at the top here, which is the numerator, is going to be, let's interpret this. This will give you 1 divided by, this 125 now becomes root, because this is going to be 3. This one is raised to power 1. Then this, the denominator is a cube, which is 3. So it means the cube root of 125, all of them raised to power 1. Then multiplied by, again, 1 over because of the negative. Now it is no longer cube because it is 2 double, that is square. So that means square root of what? 49. All again raised to power 1. Then times anything to the power of 0 is 1. So we have times 1 here. So here, cube root, this is cube root. Cube root of 125 is 5 times 5 times 5. That means 1 over 5. So we have 1 over 5. Then multiplied by square root of this gives you what? 1 over 7. Then times 1 over 1. So finally, what are we getting? 1 multiplied by 1 multiplied by 1 gives you 1, all divided by 5 multiplied by 7. 7 times 5, 35. 35 times 1 will give you what? 35. So our final answer becomes what? 1 over 35. Alright, so let's go to the next one. Next one says, given that we have here given that cos says given that cos A is equal to 12 over 13. It says for 0 less or equal to A less or equal to 90 degree. It says find tan A. Find tan A. Okay, now this is trigonometry, and it's talking about using trigonometry, the idea of trigonometry to solve questions that concerns trig. Now, if we have cos, we all know the trigonometric ratio, which is SOHCAHTOA. If we have the acronym SOHCAHTOA, and this one shows that sine equal to opposite over hypotenuse, cosine equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, and then tangent equal to opposite of what? Opposite over adjacent. So here we have that cosine of A is 12 over 13. So if we use a right angle triangle to illustrate this here, so this is right angle triangle, and then if I insert my theta here, what it implies is that here becomes my opposite, here becomes my adjacent, and here becomes my hypotenuse. So, and we're told that cos theta, that means adjacent cosine, which we know is adjacent over hypotenuse. That means adjacent here is 12, and then your hypotenuse is what? 13. So I can write this one here to be, here is 13 because it's my hypotenuse, and then here is my 12 because it is the adjacent. So if we have that, we can use it to solve this particular problem. Given this, we can get here, I can call here x. So if I want to get x, I can use what? Whichever one I want. You know that here is hypotenuse. Yes, using Pythagoras theorem, which will tell you that c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. And clearly 13 is our c squared. So we have that 13 squared is equal to, I can, here adjacent. So that is opposite of adjacent. That means here we have 12 squared plus b squared. So what is 13 squared? We have 169 is equal to 144 plus b squared. So we have 169 minus 144 equal to b squared, which will give you 25 is equal to b squared. So my b now is square root of what? 25, which is equal to 5. That is not our final answer yet, because we are told to find tan A. So therefore, tan A now, which is opposite over adjacent, will now be equal to, what is the opposite? Here, which is 5 now that we found. So it will give you 5 all over, what is the adjacent? 12. So our final answer becomes what? 5 over 12. All right, let's take one last one. The last one says here, find the sum of the entries in the inverse of, here, so find the sum. Says find the sum of the entries in the inverse of, this is the matrix. The matrix is 1, 2, 3, and 5. It says find the sum of the entries in the inverse of, this is a 2 by 2 matrix. And how do we find the inverse of a 2 by 2 matrix? Now, the inverse of a 2 by 2 matrix, which we have, if assuming we have the matrix to be x, now the inverse of x inverse will give you 1 over determinant of x multiplied by when we interchange the values of this. Assuming here is a, here is b, here is c, and here is d. I will interchange the values of A and D. So here becomes D, here becomes A. Then I insert negatives to this. We have minus B, and then we have minus C. So this is the method we're going to use to get the inverse of this matrix. Then afterwards, we'll do what? We'll find the sum of the entries. So let's find the determinant of this 2 by 2 matrix first. So we have that our x determinant of x will give you 1 multiplied by 5. We have 5 minus 2 multiplied by 3 gives you what? 6. So we have a negative 1 as the determinant of that matrix. So let's look at how to calculate our inverse. Then afterwards, we insert our answer. So here, our inverse now, our x inverse, which is 1 over the determinant we have is what? Minus 1. Then multiplying the matrix. Now, D is, now we have 1 and 5 will interchange their position. So here now will give me what? 5. And here becomes what? 1. Okay? Then my negative, we have negative 2 and negative 3. So we have negative 2 and negative 3. Okay? So if we carry out that multiplication, we're going to have that our x inverse becomes what? This negative will affect this one to give you minus 5. This negative will interact with this one to give you positive 2. Then this negative will interact with this one to also give you positive 3. This negative will interact with this one to give you negative 1. So if we are to find the sum of these entries, now it means we're going to add up all this. So we're adding up to sum of entries. Sum of entries will now be equal to, look at the entries here. We have minus 5 plus 2 plus 3 plus minus 1. So the sum of the entries now becomes negative 5 plus 2 give you negative 3. Negative 3 plus 3 gives you 0. Then 0 minus 1. So your answer becomes what? Minus 1. Yeah, please, before we go ahead, you try to subscribe to my channel, and I will produce more of those past questions on both mathematics and further mathematics. Till then, have a nice time and see you again.